Right now, if you're sitting in your house and you're warm, then turn off this video, go and do something more productive. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about what people wore to bed in the Middle Ages. So I'm currently sitting in a castle in France, which is very fitting for this video. But this castle is made of stone, and while it might be nice in the summer when it's hot and you can open up all the windows and let the breeze flow through, in the winter, especially at night, it gets really cold in here. And these thick stone walls offer little protection from the biting winds that blow through in the winter. In fact, it's so cold that even though we have a fire going, I can see my breath. And so as I sit here, enjoying the flickering light of this candle and the warmth of the fire, I can't help but think of the brave souls who lived here in the winter. Because when you visit a place like this as a tourist, you get to see the grand halls and the towers and the ramparts and everything like that. But you don't usually get to see the inside of people as homes and what life was actually like for them. So I wanted to do a video where we kind of explore that side of things and talk about what people wore to bed and why it was important. Because it turns out that sleeping in a castle wasn't exactly a walk in the park. The thing that strikes me the most about places like this is that there is no such thing as central heating. There are fireplaces and hearths, but nothing like the forced air furnace or boiler system that you might have in your own home. So that's the first thing that I want to talk about, is that it was cold. It got cold enough that if you weren't careful, you could die from exposure or hypothermia. You know, obviously, we live in a much more modern world now, and we have things like insulated windows and heated blankets and warm pajamas and all sorts of things to keep us comfortable at night. But back then, people didn't have the same luxuries. So they had to dress very warmly and wear many layers in order to stay comfortable in their beds. Now, these days, when we go to bed, we usually just kind of throw on whatever we feel like. Maybe it's a t-shirt and shorts, or maybe just your birthday suit. You know, nowadays, we have the luxury of being able to choose what we wear to bed based on our own comfort levels. But back then, it was different because you not only had to take into consideration the cold, but also propriety. So, you know, just because you in the privacy of your own bedroom, does you want to mean that you could just do whatever you want. Back then, there were still rules about what was proper attire and what you should be wearing. So yes, you had to stay warm, but you also had to maintain a certain level of decorum. This painting shows someone who is getting ready for bed, and we can see that the woman is putting on a nightgown over her undergarments. This would have been considered scandalous back then, but now it's kind of hot, so I guess fashion comes and goes. Back then, women would usually wear a corset and a farthingale as their undergarments, and then they would put on a nightgown over top of that. Men, on the other hand, would typically wear a shirt and a pair of breeches, and then they would put on a nightgown over top of that. The nightgown was basically like a long, flowing robe that came down to their feet, and it was usually made of linen or wool. This would have helped to trap heat and keep them warm throughout the night. The next thing that we need to talk about is nowadays, we have all sorts of fancy pajamas that we can choose from, whether it's silk or flannel or cotton or whatever. But back then, they didn't have the same luxuries. In fact, the word pajamas didn't even exist back then. People would just wear regular clothes to bed, usually the same clothes that they had worn during the day. So if you were a peasant and you worked in the fields, you wouldn't have a change of clothes, so you would just go to bed in your work clothes. But if you were wealthier, then you could afford to have special clothes just for sleeping in. For example, the wealthy might have had linen nightgowns or shirts that they would wear to bed. Or if they were particularly rich, they might have had custom-made garments that were specifically designed for sleeping. I recently came across some old Victorian nightdresses in a second-hand store, and I couldn't help but wonder what they would have looked like on a medieval woman. Nightdresses like these were often made of luxurious fabrics, like silk or velvet, and featured intricate lace and embroidery. While they date from a later period, they give us a glimpse into the type of garments that would have been available to upper-class women in the medieval period. But it wasn't just the fabric that mattered. The cut of the garment was also important. For example, a woman's nightgown might have been specially designed to fit over her undergarments without wrinkling or bunching up. This would not only have made it more comfortable to sleep in, but it would have also shown that her status allowed her to have specially made clothing for sleeping. In addition to a nightgown, men and women might also have worn a nightshirt or a nightcap while sleeping. These were often made of linen or wool and were designed to keep the head and neck warm. They might have also acted as a sort of buffer between the wearer and their bedding, which could have been helpful in preventing things like bed sores. These pieces of clothing would have been simple and practical, but they would have also served an important function in keeping the wearer warm and comfortable throughout the night. Another thing that we need to talk about is the bed itself. Nowadays, we're used to having nice comfy mattresses and down duvets and pillows, but back then, things were very different. Most people slept on straw mattresses, and they were only changed once a year. So you can imagine that they weren't the most comfortable or hygienic sleeping arrangements. The straw would have been very scratchy and uncomfortable to sleep on, and it would have trapped heat pretty well. But that's about its only benefit. The straw mattress would have been placed directly on top of the bed frame, and would have been surrounded by curtains or a canopy. This would have helped to keep the mattress clean and free from insects. It would also have provided a bit of privacy for the occupants of the bed. There were some people, however, who could afford to have more comfortable beds. Wealthy people might have had feather mattresses and down duvets, which would have been much more comfortable than straw mattresses. They might have also had four-poster beds with heavy curtains that hung from the ceiling. This would have created a private and cozy chamber that was perfect for sleeping. So overall, what we can see from this is that medieval people put a lot of effort into their sleep. They understood the importance of staying warm and comfortable at night, and they took great pains to make sure that they were well prepared for bed. From the clothes that they wore to the beds that they slept in, everything had been carefully considered to make sure that they would be comfortable all night long. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thank you to my supporters for making these videos possible.